Okay, so anyway, everybody knows what happened on Tuesday night, that the zoning board turned down basically turned down the CEA project. They found that it was not a customary agricultural use, and therefore, 4-1 decision, they said, nope, not gonna fly. They didn't even get into the coverage issue, which was the next issue that the opponents were gonna come up with. Now, if the town board feels that having these types of, first of all, you can decide on what kind of message that sends to anybody who wants to come into the town of Webster and do business here, and also in terms of doing any kind of agricultural business. But if the town board wants to address that and wants to specifically address hydroponic farming, which is probably the wave of the future,
Right.
you have an opportunity now to change the law.
Right.
One of the things you can do is change the law and say, this is a customary use. Very simple.
Right.
You change the law and you include this as a customary use.
Right.
You change the definition or say the customary agricultural uses include.
Correct.
Very easy.
Hydroponics.
My suggestion, however, would be that you also look at, that's very easy, you also look at the coverage issue, because if that's going to be raised as some reason to deny, and that you have people on a board who want to deny something, but the town board decides that it's a good thing, you may want to look at that coverage issue too and see how you want to change the wording of that particular law. But it can be changed. There's nothing illegal about it, there's nothing unconstitutional about it, there's nothing wrong about it if the board decides that it's a good thing for the town.
Right.
So I've said my piece on that. As far as how this is going to be handled legally, I don't know. I've already filed a notice of appeal on the original decision. I don't know whether or not the attorneys for CEA are going to appeal the zoning board decision. We still have a motion before Judge Donofrio to re-argue the initial case, and that's not going to be, that was supposed to be next Wednesday, but it's not going to be until August 12th now. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and I can't give you a report because I don't know exactly. I mean, I just told you what I.
It wasn't the planning board, it was the zoning board.
Right.
Correct.
The zoning board.
So it won't even go to the planning board at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm just extremely disappointed in that decision. And I know, Tom, that you have.
Regardless of that ruling, we need to make sure we fight the first judge's ruling, because we can't have that determined.
No, that's why we're appealing it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
John, you were,
Yeah, I
you
can't begin to express how disappointed I am at the decision. And I did speak to Charlie about what he just presented, and I know, Tom, that you have expressed in the past to look at this, look at zoning from a global perspective, and I understand that. But this is a second opportunity that Webster has lost to garner, hundreds of jobs over the word hydroponics. And I would encourage the board members to consider what Charlie has just proposed, albeit not on a global perspective, but Charlie makes a very valid point. What other company is going to want to come in here and bring hydroponics now? They're not. We just lost hundreds of jobs to Ontario. We potentially have lost hundreds of jobs to Mount Morris, because they're looking at that. And now they're going to take a hard look at it. And why? Because hydroponics is not considered customary. I just think it's a sad day for Webster.
I don't think that the issue was the farming end of it, the hydroponics. I think the issue was the coverage.
But they didn't address
They
it.
never even
I know
addressed
they
it.
didn't address it, but I'm saying the people that were against it weren't against hydroponics. They were against having,
Right.
how many acres is
Well, again, they should probably be addressed too. If we change the law, we should do it,
that? Yeah.
make a change in both those and deal with that as well, if the board thinks it's appropriate.
I don't know how you can say hydroponics isn't appropriate. I don't know.
Well,
But I also
they
don't, this juncture of where hydroponics is, I also don't see how it could be defined as customary.
Well, and to Barry's point, the opponents weren't against hydroponics. They were against where it was going and the size and all that. The ZBA said their decision ultimately was that hydroponics isn't customary.
They couldn't get to,
So-
they couldn't get to B without going from A. They couldn't get past A.
They never got past A. I watched, did you watch it?
Did not.
They never got to the coverage of 20%, you know, of this land and all that. They never got to that point.
Well,
The
if you don't
ZBA
agree that
shut
it
down.
should be there, who cares what the coverage is?
Exactly.
You're right, they didn't make a decision on the coverage.
No.
They did
Because
not.
they couldn't get past that it didn't fall under the definition, or the perceived definition, I suppose.
Did anybody else watch the ZBA meeting?
No.
I mean, Josh, you were at it, right? And I will say this, is that John DeMarco showed that he has judge background. He really did a good job. It was like watching a trial where he was being the judge, trying to, you know, just keep people focused. That's the thing that stuck out about me, but to me about watching that. But you took a, you know, and I think he really tried to say that if there's ambiguity, that the way laws are written and liberties and all that is you side on the landowner, which in this case would have been CEA. But the ZBA members, they didn't see it that way. Yeah, John, to your point, I've been somewhat, if you want to call it neutral on this the whole time. I've kind of prided myself on the fact that when I met with the opponents at Mr. Kubrick's house back a few months ago, I told them the same thing that I also told Kevin Feit and Keith Cernick for CEA. And that was that I assume this thing's going to happen. And so now I'm just basically going to do my job as supervisor to protect the town, make sure we have the taxes that should come in from the thing, make sure that the sewer lines, the outflows, the electric grids, all of that's taken care of. And I didn't have to make a stand on anything. It wasn't in our court. But I will say, and I'm, as a businessman, as someone whose family has owned businesses and whatever, I agree with John. I feel for the people that live over there and they've had that on all that. But I will say, and I don't mind that this is taped, that I was somewhat excited about the thought of that type of 21st century industry coming to Webster. And I kind of thought that if it works out, and I really thought that CEA did a good job of answering the concerns of berming and blocking and lighting and shades and putting the entrance where it wasn't going to be offensive to
Right.
They did all
the
that.
houses. I really do think that they did that. I just assumed, and look, I don't have a crystal ball, but I thought someday, whatever happens over at the 700 acres of Xerox is going to be spawned off of that development of CEA Farms at State Road. I can't explain it, I just thought that first of all, do we get the reputation in Webster that we are anti-business? That's a scarlet letter that's going to
Yes.
hurt us.
Correct.
I don't know. So that's all I got to say. And if people are watching this and the opponents come back and say, "Oh, I can't believe," I'm saying how I feel about this is that we're going through COVID-19. We just lost a ton of sales tax. Do you know that they were going to be making this lettuce 24/7, 365 days a year and shipping to 90 million people on the East Coast? Correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't we be getting the sales tax? It's not in the village, it's in the town, right?
Yeah.
Right.
How much sales tax is that?
Yes, Paul.
How much?
Big money,
Big.
yeah.
So I guess I would, where do we go? How fast do we act? To take the ambiguity out of what is considered conventional use or whatever. And we add this
Customary.
language in, and do we do it quickly?
Well, the customary thing is relatively easy in terms of taking a look at that. I haven't looked at the specific, at the acreage issue, and the coverage issue. But somebody, maybe a couple of people should look at that. Probably Josh, probably somebody from the zoning board.
Right.
You know, I would like to have somebody from the zoning board look at it, maybe the zoning board attorney
Yep.
look at it, and anybody else you want to have, you know, an expert. I mean, somebody who might be an expert in it if they're going to redraw it. But that's what needs to be looked at, you know, so it's realistic. I mean,
Right.
we're not doing it for this particular project. We're doing it long-term.
Correct.
For other projects that may come in, but we also don't, you know, Tom mentioned Xerox. You got a lot of land out there that's not being used. That was being used at one time, and right now it's not. And it's not gonna be used for industrial purposes, and those days are gone. I think we
Right.
can pretty much agree on that, so.
But we don't know
Like
what
Tom said,
Xerox.
what could it be used for? This is something, you know, something similar.
Well, and that's true, but we don't know, and Xerox is clearly not going to be telling us in any time
Right.
soon what their intent is with that property.
Right.
But we do know we have property down here that interest has been expressed in, right? So, you know, and we know that hydroponics is here to stay, not necessarily in Webster, but it's being utilized.
Again, not pushing any particular
Right.
agenda, but the fact is Webster was a farming community for many years.
Correct.
So you still have farms, especially in the eastern part of town, that are wide open, and you have farmers that want to get rid of it because they're paying huge property taxes,
Right.
which is another foolish thing. I mean, I don't want to say foolish, but this is the thing. People who are against development of these kinds of projects forget that these things don't bring in children who are going to cost you more money in school tax.
Right.
It's a win for the town all the way around financially.
Right.
But
So going forward, we need to address, you know, being more specific and the definition of large lot,
yeah.
correct? So,
Well, I guess we need to look quickly at, you know, how, well, you say quickly. We need to look at it and look at the code, the portions of the code that need to be changed, and, you know, I'll be glad to be part of it, but we all, you know, it's something we gotta do.
Do you remember when I said, when you get done with your second one, can I come back?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And
I didn't mean to first thing you
No,
did so long.
because what I wanted to comment on the first one where you said the code, what I wanted to say was, how do we, is this too much? But it seems to me, logic says, you take the comprehensive plan that's 12 years old, and in parallel, you're updating that with the code and the zoning, because don't they all kind of tie to each other?
Yeah.
Well, usually the zoning and the code revision follow the comprehensive plan. That's
Right.
usually the way it goes. I mean, they come up with a plan and they say
Right.
this is basically a suggestion, it's not a law. And then the code revision people, whoever is interested, looks at the comprehensive plan and say, okay, here's what we need to change.
Well, and it's funny because, I mean, in the meetings I've been in and whatever, certainly there's some talented people in town that have said, you know, man, I've been involved with this like a bar. You know, I can tell you what keeps coming up is a code that just doesn't make any sense
Right.
anymore, or whatever. So, yeah, I'd like to tap into those people, because I don't know if the code book, it probably only needs like 5% changing. I don't know, you know.
Charlie, do you feel it's more? I mean, you're saying that it's in pretty bad shape?
Well, no, it's in bad shape only because we've been passing laws that have not been put into the code book.
Okay.
They're online, but we need to have a
Yes,
hard
they're
copy
not.
book, and these books are out of date, and it's, as you know, it's caused a few problems in
Right.
meetings and things of that nature.
And
So
the
that needs to be cleaned up. The book, physically, the book. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
In terms of code revision, we've had a couple of major revisions. I mean, I chaired the two committees. We had one that followed the 2000, and that lasted for years. That lasted for a couple of years. Then we had another one that was shorter, and that followed the 2008 code revision. So we've had a couple of code revisions, and we put in the 228, which is planning board, and the planning board and the special use permit process, and we changed a lot of the zoning back in 2001, 2, and 3 based on the 2000 comprehensive plan. So we've made pretty much. I don't know if it's 5%, 10%. It's not going to be any more. But I think we need to look at what is outdated And there was stuff that, we've been doing pretty well in terms of changing it. We put in the stormwater management chapter, we've completely redone the sewer, that's all been redone in my term, so that book is probably half changed from what it was when I came aboard, so. I don't know that we need that much, but we definitely should have some revision, sure.
And John, you referenced, and I have said, I would rather not do what you call spot zoning, and I don't know if this changing the law and customary has anything to do with zoning as much as it does to, I don't know, I mean, but.
Well, the thing that jumps out at me on this, Tom, is that the state of New York came back, and this goes way back to the tomato farm, Undergrove. They came out and they said, this is a fine use, this is agricultural, they pretty much gave the blessing. They pulled the rug out from under us because of the conservation easement.
Right.
Not because it was not agriculture.
Right.
So they basically given the blessing, that was what, I don't know, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago, 2016, 15, 16. So, and if anything, these things are springing up all over the place. Like a number of you, I didn't, but a number of you have visited the various plants around. I go up to Canada once in a while, and you go, boy, you take the QEW, you see them all over the freaking place, of different kinds, different, but
What I
they're
can't
all over
understand
up
on their
there.
ruling, I just don't understand their ruling because Albany said it is a farming use.
For some reason,
What didn't they say from that?
Because it didn't say hydroponics in the definition.
Yeah.
That's why.
we just need to change the definition. Like I say, this is an easy
It's a
fix.
simple fix.
This is easy, it's an easy fix. And there's nothing wrong with
We
it, it's
shouldn't have
not,
to wait 2.5 to 3 years.
It would have been wrong to do it ahead of time, obviously, but
Well, I understand.
now we're not, we're not doing it for this
Well,
particular project, we're doing it
and
for
that-
the future.
I don't want to be disingenuous or be perceived as, I said, I don't want to get behind spot zoning because this guy in West Webster has bee in his bonnet about, something that is very different from East Webster. We'll handle zoning in totality and globally, and that's what I think you were referencing, Jim. But if this has got to be done relatively quick, how do we do that
Somebody look at the
and
two.
not be it seen as
Somebody look
spot
at the two
zoning or
issues that
law
were
change?
before the zoning board and say, okay, what, if anything, needs to be changed, what should be changed? Clearly customary should be changed because I think the intent of the town board and pretty much everybody I've talked to who lives in Webster is that this should have been agricultural. This is agricultural. I
The
think.
state of New York has labeled it as
Yes,
agricultural.
yes.
But is it customary? No, it's a new technology.
Well, it'll
It's
be-
coming to, it's not a new technology, it's just new to this area.
Well,
It's
let's
not
put it this way.
customary to this area, but it may be customary in another area.
Okay, we put in the word customary, we don't even have to have customary, we could have just said agricultural, and then there would not have
Well,
been
then
an
we're
issue,
Well,
So that,
If
the
you
word
watched-
customary
if
is
you watched
something
the-
we put
If you
in.
watched the meeting the other night, we're basically recanting the meeting.
Yeah,
Because in the board, and I'm nothing against the ZBA board, it is, they struggled with this word customary. They were trying to basically get in the head of who wrote it years ago, and what did they mean then? Well, how the heck do you do that? You know what I mean? We got Webster dictionaries for customaries, I mean, it got, and I thought John DeMarco did a real good job saying we need to, he was a judge. He was trying to, but it, he knew at the end of the day, they never got to step 2. They didn't get to the 20% coverage and all that. So,
Okay, we don't need to go any further with it.
no, we don't. I mean,
Well, do we look into changing and taking the customary out there, or do we wait 3 to 5 years till we have new comprehensive plan, and then we look at the zoning then? Because in this situation, I'd rather make the changes now than later. That's just my personal.
that's your
Personal
decision,
opinion.
yeah, that's the board's decision.
Yeah.
code is different from zoning. Code needs revisions. You got some talented people who already can kind of give us a heads up on it, like Barb. Zoning, could the board, look at the places in town and over the years saying, that zoning doesn't make any sense in that part of town anymore. And make the global zoning changes relatively quick, and within
Well,
that,
a good example is the
is-
office park, right? I mean, we thought there was gonna be office, that was the wave of the future 12, 13 years ago, when we created the office park district. There's no office parks around, because they were springing up all over, and all of a sudden they just died. Especially with the advent of home office now,
it's a tough one.
I don't know that the board wants to take on capriciously deciding what zoning shouldn't be in what area anymore without having a comprehensive plan committee to assist with that.
It really isn't up to the board to decide zoning, it's more up to the residents. And the residents and the committee that would be formed for the
Right.
comprehensive plan, the committee that would be on that,
Yeah.
and they would hash all that out.
That's pretty much the process that takes place, and then when they finish it and it's complete, they present it to the board.
Right.
And as Charlie said, it's a recommendation.
Right,
The board does not have to follow it to the T,
right.
but if you have a group of residents in your community, along with others who've put all the time into this, pretty foolish if you ignore it altogether too.
That makes sense to me. I'm just saying, well, how does what Charlie just described, how is that not tantamount to spot zoning?
It's not.
oh, it's not spot zoning.
No, not at all.
It's not spot zoning.
It's really refining the definition of something.
Just
Are you
changing.
talking about what we do with the agricultural? The agricultural thing, or are you
Well,
talking about?
the customary and the 20% coverage,
The customary definitely is not spot zoning. All you're doing is you're talking about, I mean, that was just a word.
It's a definition.
It's
word
a
that's not a
definition, you
definition.
can change the definition, as long as it's reasonable and rational. And I think you have a basis if you want to include it, because again, the state of New York has already said that it's agriculture. I
Right.
don't think that's really, and again, if you talk to the person on the street and you ask that, the average person who's not against the project, who's not for the project, the average person who's neutral would say, well, of course it's agriculture. You're growing living things, you're growing plants.
For consumption.
It's agriculture. I
Well,
don't think,
Maybe
to me, I don't know how you cannot look at that. People say it's a factory, I mean,
Well, is that-
you're putting things together on an assembly line, it's
Starts
not,
growing pigs there, which
Yeah.
was there years and years and years ago.
which you could do, that would be agriculture.
Those people.
That'd be
they were going
customary.
nuts Because
Wait a
they,
minute, they
Big
listed, and John got into that it specifically says what you can't
Right.
raise. But it must not have been pigs, it was furry animals or whatever. I don't remember, I was watching the thing, but okay, so you're defining something, you're changing the definition, that's not.
And we can list in there what we include, as Eric, I would suggest you list in there.
Because the 20%
customary out.
coverage.
Or take customary out, that would be
Take
a
it out.
good thing too.
Take it
Yeah.
Right, my interpretation of the 20% coverage was totally meant in, now I'm getting into the mind of when they wrote that. What had to do with residential properties.
Right.
And large
And that should-
properties.
that-
It
again,
didn't have to do with.
If that's not clear, that should be clarified. And if that, I'll just leave it at that. If people, and there obviously is an issue as to what that means as well. You have one thought on it, somebody else may have another thought on it. And if that's not clear, that should be redrawn so it is clear, whatever that may be. The town board can then rule on that. That's what I'm saying, those two issues, those two things, which apparently are before the, one might be in front of the zoning board, again, should be dealt with, and dealt with now. And this is the time to do it, I think, if the town board wants to, so.
I do.
I just have a question that's nagging at me, and maybe I'm missing the obvious here. If we change that and we do it quickly, this project can come back,
If they want to.
and that doesn't look like we've done it just for them?
Well, it probably will look like we did just with them. That's a political decision,
And I'm
you know.
thinking that's kind of where your head's going with spot zoning, it's more like
is, yeah.
favor zoning, you know?
Well, except that I think, again, I haven't heard anybody say that the CEA project was a bad idea. Therefore, what would have been.
I heard plenty of people say it should be somewhere else, not
Yeah,
that it's a
okay,
bad idea.
All right. let's just say most of the people on this board think that something like this is not a bad thing for the town, it's a good thing for the town. If you
Correct.
assume it's a good thing for the town, and it was stopped because of a decision by the zoning board, then any other project like this is going to be stopped by one of the boards, probably the zoning board. They found a way now to do that.
Right.
If the town board wants to encourage this kind of development in the town of Webster, you can do it. At least you can, this is one roadblock you can knock off the books.
Exactly.
So in other words, you're not doing it just to benefit them, you're doing it to benefit somebody else. If it isn't CEA, maybe somebody else comes down the road.
Well, and I would like to think of it as not so much as removing a roadblock, but as is defining the code so that however it's applied makes more sense, and that itself is less capricious.
Well, the thing is this, we were already stopped, by we, I mean the town of Webster was stopped from putting it in Indergrow, which then went just a few miles over the line and is now benefiting another county and another town.
And I have to say that in defense of the planning board, who initially approved this, they were going from their experience with Intergrow, where the state said hydroponics is
Yes,
agriculture.
correct, they were.
It had clearly been defined.
No, the planning board didn't have a problem, well, as
And
far as
they-
I know, they didn't have a problem.
No, I mean, they saw no need for variances. They felt it met everything.
I was all for that, the tomatoes. I was all for that. And then I see what's out on 104, and I think we're really lucky
Really?
that we didn't put that where it was gonna go. To put 50 acres of greenhouses that are much better placed in Ontario, almost out of sight, than they would be on state road, or on.
So you're not saying it's bad for Ontario, you're saying it's better because it's,
The location
The
of it
location,
is so much better, because it's a monstrosity. And that's only half of it. That's only 25 acres of it. They're gonna double that. To put that all in Schreiber's old property would have been great, would have been
well,
for
Schreiber,
tomato growers and stuff, but it certainly would have changed the look of that section of town.
well, Schreiber ended up selling the property anyway, right?
I thought it was already sold. I didn't know that he sold it again. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, I thought that was conditional, anyway, I thought that was a conditional sale on, with Intergrow or lease or whatever, that was,
I'm not aware of that.
okay.
I'm just saying, the things that the last people were gonna do, they were gonna burn it so you couldn't see it.
Right.
They were gonna do all that.
Oh,
And if that happened, okay. Would it have increased traffic? Apparently, it would have, truck traffic. There's pros and cons to both ends of that. I mean, you're used to living in a quiet section of town where all you look at is hay and grass and alfalfa and corn. That's all you see. And you start putting 50 acres or 100 acres of buildings up, that changes the whole atmosphere out there, the whole color of the town. I can understand why those people didn't want it there. The tomato section, that's part of my heritage. That's what my grandparents and my uncles, they're all hothouse people. We have hothouses right here on Clem Road.
Yep.
Forever and ever, that grew tomatoes and was loved by all. But it was there before, it was there long before the houses were built. I drive past that thing on my way out to Sodas to play golf 3-4 times a week, and I see that and I think, oh boy, I'm glad that's not on Salt Road.
but you know what you just said, Barry? You see it.
Yeah,
And I was liking the fact that they were building that thing and adapting to
Yep.
wishes of the planning board so that you could not see it. And if you remember what I said earlier, one thing I was trying to be consistent on is I was telling the opponents the same thing I was telling CEA. I wanted to fly out in June before COVID. If this thing was gonna happen, I wanna see with my own eyes, call me Doubting Thomas, I wanna see at night when these shades go up. Does it diffuse the light and not become, because just because the developer is telling us that, trust and verify. That was Ronald Reagan.
and we had a
I
situation.
wanted to see that myself.
We had a situation like this over right off of Ridge Road, the community that was built between Jackson Road and Westover Drive, and those back in there, you know, that were, you know, where the new McDonald's is.
Oh, Pepper Ridge.
Yeah,
So
Pepper Ridge, then where the, you know, people were up
Same
in arms
areas.
because, you know, they didn't want this, they didn't want to see all those things. Well, they put these giant berms and trees up, and I don't think that they can.
Can't see it, but they can smell the McDonald's.
Probably gets them hungry.
Well, in defense of Integral, when they went out where they did go, they didn't have to do all those things, and that's why you can see it.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, should we put this on the agenda to talk about or look into, or?
Well, I think what you can do is charge, and I'll be, you know, part of it, but we need to have a couple of people put together and look at it and say, what do we do to change? What do we have to change?
And somebody from the zoning board.
I think we appoint somebody ask somebody from the zoning board, or ask Barry, or if he would do it, or if he could appoint somebody to do it. Have John involved, have Josh involved, and have me involved, and, you know, could run you want, okay,
be part of it.
John Cale could be involved too.
Charlie, does this end up being resolution, ordinance, law?
It would be, the way it would work is that we'd probably talk about it at a workshop, tone it up, and once we had it settled the way the town board liked it, or in a manner that we think is appropriate, then you schedule a public hearing.
Yeah.
And then then 2 meetings from that, you have the public hearing, and you either pass it or change it or whatever. And
What are you passing? Resolution?
a new, a
ordinance,
local law, a local law.
That's what I thought, I just.
Yeah, we don't do, when we came on board, we did ordinances. I went to a couple of classes, and basically, local law is better, it's stronger. It's less, it's actually cheaper for the town to do that, you have less publication costs, so we do local law, but it's actually stronger than an ordinance, so.
Okay.
Well,
What's next on the